Realignment equals RK equals Part 4 equals RK equals CIC Republic Cruiser Victoria Argor system. A screening force of munificent frigates was all that awaited us on arrival. As soon as they detected our presence, they ran for it, heading for the hyperlanes leading out of the system. Soon, we received mixed messages from the planet. Argor was a major trade hub that, until the war escalated, enjoyed Corellian control and protection. When Corellia joined the war, the Separatists wasted no time securing the system. A Corellian fleet kicked them out, only to pull back in the face of the Separatists' grand offensive. Ever since then, the place had been under enemy control. Our arrival didn't exactly change that. General, local resistance and government officials in hiding confirmed the presence of at least 2 army groups worth of droids holding critical infrastructure and major population centers. Dispatch a task force to hold the orbitals and back up loyal forces with ion cannon bombardment. Please impress on the locals that, at this time, we lack the ground forces across the fleet to reinforce them properly. However, supplying them with a limited number of small arms, medical supplies, food, and ammunition should be possible. I ordered. Each of our capital ships had the armories for the ground forces it could carry, even if most of those troops were not on board. Having them present when we didn't intend to wage ground campaigns would have only increased the casualties when we lost a ship to enemy action. Thus, all the troopers we had on board were what was deemed necessary to prevent boarding actions and ensure standard shipboard security. This, of course, meant that we didn't have the warm bodies to reinforce any loyalists we stumbled upon. However, we did have a lot of weapons and vehicles they could put to good use, especially if they were in areas that allowed limited orbital support. Taking the system without a fight presented us with specific opportunities. The ever-present possibility of Trench turning around to strike at us was a danger, yes. However, if he came this way, something the locals were unaware of if he did, then he could have only one target, the Mid-Rim Alliance. Otherwise, the bulk of the Separatist fleet would have moved on to Alantine, resupplied in the enemy holdings in the region, then moved towards the core Separatist territories in the northeastern part of the galaxy. Aside from Fondor far behind us, the only thing for Trench here was an offensive action to deny us allies. Yet, after smashing the Mid-Rim Alliance, committing the bulk of his fleet here would leave him vulnerable, low on supplies and fuel. Doing so would leave him in a position for us to smash, in turn, the core of the Separatist fleets. That would be a strategic exchange that would be too far in our favor. In the long run, the Mid-Rim Alliance could become a significant power. In the short to medium term, they had too much territory to protect with insufficient assets. The Separatists had already crippled substantial parts of the infrastructure in this whole part of the galaxy, making the Alliance's situation worse. Propping the MRA would cost the Republic time and resources that could otherwise be used against Separatist holdings. Realistically, the war would be decided one way or another before the Mid-Rim Alliance could leverage its assets to be a decisive factor in the war. While it could still level the odds on our side, the same was true if the Separatists went too far in attacking it and lost too many assets in neutralizing the Alliance. They had to do it on the cheap, or at least keep it weak for as long as possible that way. That was the cold-blooded military answer to the problem at hand. Politics were a thing. The Separatists were still trying to dismantle the Republic politically as well. Losing what, for all intents and purposes, would be our only major ally outside a core would be a significant blow in that regard. It might convince critical players it isn't worth it to pay the price for a victory or even fight for better terms. I needed the Mid-Rim Alliance and deployed all forces under my command toward it. We could always get Trench and the Separatist Navy another day. We have a dangerous opportunity here, I spoke to the whole fleet after it gathered in the system. Resupply operations were ongoing, and everyone was awaiting their marching orders. With Operation Starhammer a stunning success, we have created a priceless opportunity. Ever since the Separatists' grand offensive, the Core and Mid-Rim Alliance had stood alone, kept apart by the enemy. Right here and now, we can change this. We can open supply lanes allowing precious resources to flow into the core to feed the industries that keep us in the war. At the same time, we can finally ensure our cut-off comrades are properly supplied and strike yet another blow to the enemy. As soon as the fleet resupplies, we will begin offensive operations against targets of opportunity in the Mid-Rim. The aim is to cripple if not outright destroy the separatist presence in the region and ensure uncontested logistic lanes between the Mid-Rim Alliance and the rest of the Republic. =RK=. For the past 2 weeks, Alliance forces have been on constant alert, expecting an all-out separatist offensive. The movement of enemy forces and increased chatter detected by scouting elements painted a grim picture. The increasing fear that despite General Vale's stunning success in the Mid-Rim, the Republic war effort collapsed had led various politicians to begin talking about negotiated surrender to the separatists quietly. At the same time, they cut off GAR forces, and many military sources pledged that they would fight to the bitter end in defense of the Mid-Rim Alliance and all the Republic stood for. Separatist forces building up at Shumava, Triton, and Inark Rindelia after the system fell again under enemy control were expected to begin an all-out assault soon. In contrast, small enemy battle groups pinned down as many Alliance and Republic assets across the Mid-Rim as possible. We all knew their targets, Eriadu and Naboo. Theed News Service. We have breaking news from the Regional Alliance HQ at Theed. Admiral Tigellinus just confirmed that all no separatist naval units forward from the Alliance are currently on the move. Contrary to expectations, the enemy forces are reported to be pulling out. At the same time, the long-feared offensive against Eriadu and Naboo has failed to materialize. Theed Chronicle. My fellow citizens of Naboo, the Mid-Rim Alliance, and the Galactic Republic. I come before you this day with vital news. In the past hours, Republic forces under the overall command of General Delcatar Vale struck at separatist worlds across the Mid-Rim. As of now, major Republic fleet elements are striking down the Rimmer trade route, the Hydian Way, and the Inark Run, crushing separatist resistance in their way. We are no longer alone. The separatists' lies lay exposed for the galaxy to see. The Republic holds firm. Speech by Queen Nietni after MRA naval elements established communications with advancing Republic forces. President Biola's Bribs, this is Admiral Trent from the Republic Navy. The only terms we will accept are the unconditional surrender of Sullust and the intact surrender of all remaining Soru-Suab assets in the system. If you choose to resist, I have a message from General Vale. As soon as I am done with Darknell, I can come to finish the job. We surrender. Just keep that butcher away from Sullust. An exchange between Admiral Trent and President Bribs of Sullust. We have a treat for you tomorrow. Theed will be the place of a joint Republic Alliance military parade in honor of General Vale's victorious return. As the Queen said earlier, we are no longer alone in this fight, people. The hyperlanes linking us with the core are once again open and under Republic control. The enemy forces building up to take us out are pulling back to defensive positions instead of risking General Vale's wrath. Things are looking up. Trade with the core should resume soon, and we will finally have access to various goods and vital supplies that have been at a premium for so long. Theed Chronicle. Brigadier Gideon Tarkin and Admiral Tarkin have left Eriadu after Republic reinforcements reached the system. They are en route to Naboo to participate in a strategic meeting between Mid-Rim Alliance leaders and Republic representatives. Theed Royal Informational Service, laying the foundations of a new order. =RK=. Part 1. =RK=. This is Sylvia Halcyon, live from the tarnished jewel that is Theed City on Naboo. A camera droid flew around the famous journalist, panning the view of a city that had obviously seen combat. Over her right shoulder, a holographic window opened, where in stark contrast, archive video of Theed showed it in all its glory in the aftermath of the Naboo crisis over a decade ago. The most significant difference was something no one could miss. A crash-landed separatist battleship had nearly slammed into the mountainside the city stood upon, literally touching the cliffs. The ship itself now swarmed with droids and workers who were busy dismantling it. What used to be a lush valley displayed the sights of a brutal fight with hundreds of wrecked, blackened vehicles dotting the landscape. Despite the separatists' best efforts, Naboo remains unbent, unbowed, and unbroken, Sylvia continued. Her image dissolved in moths of light that flew up until they reached orbit and joined countless moving lights. Wreckage of whole fleets surrounded the planet in slowly forming rings of steel. Hundreds of hulks floated in stationary orbit surrounded by damaged yet proud Republic cruisers. Some Confederate ships in the area were battered to little more than scrap that barely retained structural integrity. Others, like a row of pristine Lucree hulks, were intact, surrendered by panicking enemy commanders. They had an honor guard presenting all mass-produced vessels in the Confederate Navy, damaged to one extent or another. Countless moving lights slowly devoured the end of the derelict fleet, turning it into valuable materials and salvaging intact components. I am glad to announce for the whole galaxy to hear that the strategic situation for the Republic finally changed for the better. We are no longer fighting to merely survive the war. Now, we are fighting to win. The survival of the Mid-Rim Alliance and access to resources from the Rim will have a rejuvenating effect on struggling core industries long starved of materials to work with. Hundreds of sectors across the Western Galactic Quadrant will soon enjoy the attention of Republic naval hunter squadrons and to deal with separatist raiders preying on vulnerable logistics and industries. From GNN's The Galaxy at War. The Corellian system is finally secure. As of noon today, Galactic Standard Time, General Obi-Wan Kenobi, Supreme Commander of the Republic Military Combat Forces, announced that naval combat operations across the Corellian system have concluded. The Republic Navy hunted down all separatist naval elements across the system and neutralized all fixed defenses the enemy deployed. Corellia itself is now firmly in Republic's hands. However, the fight to liberate the remaining 4 of the 5 brothers is just beginning. The same is true for hundreds of core worlds in the Western Core. Republic scouts have pushed as far as the Hoshnian and Byblos system, confirming GAR High Command fears. The Separatists have been using the time since their successful Grand Offensive to deploy whole army groups to occupy core worlds. This puts the Republic military in a strategic bind: either deploy liberation forces across the core, which would lead to an enormous logistical strain, or abandon countless billions at the mercy of the enemy's droid legions in pursuit of a naval victory. Holonet News. Did General Vale go rogue as some of his critics warned he might? Instead of retreating and consolidating his command in the core after the successful completion of Operation Star Hammer and an unsuccessful attempt to pin down Admiral Trench's fleet in the core, General Vale went on another offensive. Once again, he has deployed precious Republic resources to prop up the dubious long-term prospects of the so-called Mid-Rim Alliance instead of focusing on more vital concerns, like ensuring the security of our beloved core worlds. Is he wasting critical assets in a bid for personal advancement and glory? Military experts will discuss the strategic situation and the merit of General Vale's decisions this evening. HoloNet's Strategy Insider =RK Theat City, Naboo, Mid-Rim Alliance. It was amusing taking part in a military parade on Naboo, of all places. I didn't have to be a genius or cheat with the Force to figure out there were many reasons for the ongoing show and that at least some of them were conflicting. What do you think, apprentice? Watching the planet from orbit during our final approach painted an exciting and unpleasant picture. Months ago, when we left, the place looked better in the direct aftermath of the fighting. To the best of my knowledge, save for hunting cis droids that didn't get the memo about their commanders surrendering, there had been no significant clashes either on the ground or in orbit. Unfortunately for Naboo, it wasn't easy to get rid of the damage from all the battles the planet has suffered lately. Instead of showing signs of recovery, the biosphere was deteriorating. Between Blue Shadow, stray shots from the naval battles in orbit, and the ground fighting, the once lush world was more brown and red than green and blue now. Radiation and toxins spilled from crashed ships or those that blew up in the upper atmosphere. Contaminants poisoned large tracts of land, ruining Naboo's secondary industry of exporting food and exotic wines. Mining the decidedly odd depths of the planet for plasma helped keep the economy afloat as well as the Mid-Rim Alliance, yet doing so did little to address imminent food shortages. First, using warship hulls as orbital hydroponic farms. I would have thought they would be more useful as defensive platforms. Couldn't the locals build sealed farms on the ground or in orbit to address the food shortages while augmenting their defense? Arya asked. Industrial capacity, trained workforce, and other constraints. Besides, now those farms are hard targets, or they would be if the Naboo decided to refurbish their weapons. I didn't need to speak aloud in my mind to make it clear that using captured CIS hardware against the Confederacy might be pointless in most cases. We do know they have shut down codes for their droids' armies, or at least that was the case back on Ryloth. We couldn't assume this had changed. Spare parts and resources for recycling then, Arya called up a memory from the ships in orbit. There were a lot of captured ships, and even with what had to be help from all over the region, the locals appeared to have barely made a dent in the hardware in orbit. It was telling that the Naboo government sounded extremely pleased about reopening the hyper lanes leading to the core. All those ships made for a tempting target for the Confederacy. From what I gathered, they were slowly building up the forces needed to take out the Alliance. Second, I had no idea how efficient or productive those farms were. Naboo might have expected a food crisis while cut off from the core and the intact agri-worlds there. That was good. I would need all the goodwill I earned, considering what I needed the Alliance to provide me with. Thoughts on the situation, apprentice? I asked while junior officers were assembling something that wouldn't look too embarrassing on parade. We were light on ground forces, substituting with parts of the crews who got to enjoy this circus as a part of their shore leave. Eriadu would be better in that regard. Because of its messed up nature, any farming over there must happen within sealed domes. If I recall correctly, what do those things look like? In that case, anything but direct orbital bombardment or a capital ship crashing into one of those agricultural complexes will do little to disrupt food production, Arya spoke in my head. The same couldn't necessarily be said for many loyalist worlds across the Alliance and beyond. Even if they were intact, the logistics network supplying them or bring the food they produce to where it is needed? The Separatists did their best to gut it. In the short term, our arrival hasn't meaningfully improved the situation. While building up for a full-scale attack, the Confederacy had sent many raiders all over the place to hunt down freighters and destroy dispersed industries. We stopped the expected assault. However, there could be a lot of raiders to deal with. Lost freighters won't rebuild themselves. To stabilize the situation, the Alliance will need logistics support and reinforcements to secure their rear areas. I continued my lecture. Let us remember all the destroyed infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt. If the Alliance were a more credible threat in the short to medium term, the Separatists would have gone out of their way to neutralize it for good, even at the expense of reinforcing trench in the core. I spent the next hour straightening up the improvised parade in my honor, then, we could finally get on with it. That, of course, was another teaching opportunity. Can you feel it, apprentice? The jubilation of the crowd was real enough. However, only some locals were happy with the turn towards militarization Naboo took. There were many people with mixed emotions making for a delicious palate. I could taste an undercurrent of resentment and anger, primarily unfocused for now. The city was worse to wear. Many, even among those cheering, were tired from the war already. This is amazing. Those emotions. I feel like I could do anything, and this is a relatively small crowd, Arya exclaimed. Imagine the plazas in front of the Senate on Coruscant, all packed with people cheering you. Or even better, all united in fear and anger, stewing in simmering hatred, waiting for your leadership. You don't need to be a Force adept to harness such power. All you need is a charismatic orator. I could sense Arya's form shimmer at the very thought. When all was said and done, there was a good reason why the Jedi tended to avoid politics. When involved, it was far too easy to find yourself surrounded by temptation. If you didn't know how to handle it, well, even if you did, all those emotions were seductive. The sheer power right here waiting to be harnessed, begging for it. ready to be taken and used. This wasn't even the dark side playing her usual games, just a fired-up crowd with the emotions you would expect mixing up into a delicious cocktail. If I was to make a speech when we arrived in front of the palace, I could easily have the crowd dance to my tune. Experiencing all those emotions washing over my emphatic senses was something else. They brought forth a sense of melancholy. I couldn't let myself remember a different place, a different triumph. Not here and now. Yet, we were about to reach the palace, and I was expected to say something to the screaming crowds. "Master?" Arya's voice sounded distant in my head. I shook myself for nearly falling into a memory. The place was different, the chanting and the people and architecture looked nothing alike, yet the sense of familiarity was overwhelming. I shook my head again and stood on top of the walker I rode at the head of the parade. The force surged through me even before I consciously called it. The walker stopped in front of the palace's entrance, and I turned to face the crowds gathered on the large plaza in front of it. "Citizens of Naboo, look around us." My voice echoed through Theed streets. "All you've suffered is a testament to the hubris of the core worlds. It's a painful reminder that the Republic failed you as it did countless others over the past century. It outright abandoned the two core pillars that made it great, the pledge of mutual defense and the promise of economic prosperity." More and more people went quiet and cranked their necks my way to hear me speak. I did not return bringing empty promises. In the core, the Republic is fracturing, unable to bear the burden of its sins and the greed of its selfish member worlds. Instead, I came bringing the promise of a new order. Even as we speak, Chancellor Kenobi and countless others toil day and night to keep the war effort from collapsing. They work tirelessly to find a new paradigm to replace the failure of the old order. I ask of you, all of you, citizens of the Mid-Rim Alliance, to come forth and help us build ourselves a future worth living. Send your representatives to Coruscant, so we can forge a new order and reforge the galaxy anew. "Master, you know, your words could be considered treason," Arya chuckled. "You know, if the Republic was still a thing instead of a sham kept up for the masses' sake. Just wait until the damn Jedi hear about this." I thought at Arya while my eyes roamed over the gathered crowds. The long, tense seconds of silence were followed by proclamation before the first shouts of approval shattered it. "General Vale. The new order. For the Alliance. Damn the useless Republic. We will build our future." =RK equals Part 2 =RK equals Royal Palace, Theed City, Naboo, Mid-Rim Alliance. Over 100 ambassadors, government leaders, and even the odd dictator gathered in a large conference room led by Queen Niat-Ni. The number of military officers from the GAR and the Mid-Rim Alliance still dwarfed them. Most of them didn't look particularly happy to see me now, in contrast to their reactions before my little speech outside. "That's surprising. Why exactly?" Arya snarked in my head. "Master," she added without betraying a hint of sarcasm. "General Vale." The Queen turned an imperious gaze my way. She wore a headdress that wouldn't be out of place on Satine's head at her most ridiculous and enough makeup to stop a blaster bolt. "We have questions," she tried to sound ominous. It was almost cute. "Your conduct today leaves much to be desired." That might be the case for a general of the Republic. A head of state, on the other hand? I tilted my head to the side as if showing them my Mandalorian-style helmet better. As Mandalore, I can say and do many things that a Republic general could never afford to, no matter what their private thoughts on any given matter. I come bringing news from the Chancellor, an explanation, and an opportunity. Your actions were key in establishing the Mid-Rim Alliance, General Vale. It was your choice to fight for it that ensured it survived. Yet again, it was your choice to push to the Mid-Rim that ensured our continued survival. Brigadier Gideon Tarkin's commanding voice abruptly silenced any potential dissent. "I can speak for Iriadu and our closest allies in this. We would like to hear what you have to say." Beside him, my man Will Huff nodded firmly. "First, we will disperse with all pretenses. All the buzz in the news about a resurgent republic finally finding its feet after the catastrophes that followed the separatists' grand offensive? Those are lies. The republic never recovered. Chancellor Kenobi represents the interests within the core that decided to fight on even as the republic, for all intents and purposes, collapsed in the aftermath of Palpatine's assassination. I waited for my words to sink in. The wave of shock that spread through the room didn't disappoint. Incredulity, sheer disbelief, horror, vindication, righteous anger, and fear sent a tingle of pleasure up and down my spine. Master, how can you handle such emotions all the time? Arya demanded within the safety of my mind. You can learn to largely ignore them and shut down your emphatic sense when near large groups of excited people. It's either that or use the emotions as fuel and a weapon, apprentice. We will, of course, use it today, I thought, and pulled on the force, riding on the emotionally charged atmosphere and looking for the best way to utilize it. The message I bring is simple. Just like I said outside, it is time to find a new way. The pretense that the Republic is still alive and well won't last for much longer. Before this sham collapses, we all need a new framework for running the galaxy and prosecuting the war to a favorable conclusion. You have the Chancellor's pledge that she and her closest allies will back the Mid-Rim Alliance within reason for practical reasons, if nothing else. We offer you a unique opportunity. Send your representatives to Coruscant to participate in the talks and decisions that will shape the nature of a new galactic order. Right now, the Mid-Rim Alliance has a chance like no other. We offer you a place on the table. If you play your cards right, you can be one of the pillars that balance the old powers of the core under the new paradigm. The rewards for the Alliance in the long term can be immense. No one expected this, it seemed. The sheer shock and disbelief that spread through the room like wildfire were staggering in their intensity. This is too much. We didn't sign up for such madness. That is precisely why we formed the Alliance. If what Mandalore says is true, this is indeed a unique situation that comes once in an age. Under no other circumstances would the powers of the core allows us a say in what a reforged republic will become. The Queen had to screech to be heard over the chaos that followed my proclamation. I don't need to explain our strategic situation again, my Tarkin raised his voice next. This arrangement we have has the potential to do great things in the future. It could be a shining beacon in our part of the galaxy everyone strives to emulate, but only if we can get enough time to rebuild. The separatists wouldn't give us the luxury of time. You all saw the reports and sensor logs of gathering forces. Now, the core will have no choice but to treat us as equals. They need us, what we represent, and what we can offer just like we need them. Is politics always this chaotic, if not outright stupid? Arya demanded. Oh, you summer child. You've seen nothing yet. We've been lucky so far, with Satine stuck dealing with most politics and politicians. There is one more matter we need to discuss, related to the future of the galaxy and how certain powers in the core see things. Due to recent events, we have Kuat and, provisionally, Corellia on our side. More damn exclamations, this time of sheer disbelief, met my statement. Due to recent events, both systems and their alliances are shadows of what they were. Corellia, in particular, is in a position to offer only credibility and a limited amount of political support. While Kuat is better, it also suffered critical damage to its infrastructure. Their rivals in the core would rather see both systems never recover for short-sighted reasons. In the same vein, there will be no practical support for liberating Mandalore and securing the surrounding sectors. Doing so can allow for another power not controlled by the core to raise and oppose them, just like this alliance. You're watching the news coming from the core now that we're replacing communication infrastructure and using Navy elements as relays. You know the kind of sentiment I am talking about. Angry and rebellious murmurs met my speech. We know who and why we were left on our own for so long before this war began in earnest, Gideon Tarkin noted. We were never in a position to do something about it, and at the end of the day, the separatists are worse. I didn't risk much once again of the goodness of my heart, as you well know. You knew there would be a price to pay for my aid. What I want is simple: allies in liberating Mandalore. Logistics and industrial aid to put my nation back on its feet. In exchange, you will get a firm ally to further aid you in counterbalancing the power of the core worlds. In the long term, you will also get a military ally willing to act instead of dither and watch anyone out of their grasp burn. And if we do nothing? Someone shouted from the crowd. Ask the people of Sullust what happens when an enemy decides it's a good idea to back me in a corner. Ask the Bothans what I do with those who betray my trust. Or better ask those in the core, who would love to see you all fall to the separatists for the presumption of standing on your own feet. That is something we will not do. The people of Eriadu still remember what honor means, Gideon snapped. You saved us more than once in the span of months, Mandalore. The least we can do is return the gesture and aid you in liberating your own home. For what it's worth, Naboo will stand with you, General. You were here doing your best against the separatists and their forever damned biological weapon. In our darkest hour, you came to save us again and again. Let it not be said that Naboo throws away its allies when they need our aid. Apprehension and honest determination shone through the Queen's words. By no means everyone agreed, yet enough of the people who mattered pledged their support and determination to see Mandalore liberated and a new order forged on Coruscant for the good of us all.